You're watching Reality Check. After a bruising second wave, India's virus curve may be receding for now. But it's the cost to the economy which is now an emerging area of concern, with multiple recent reports suggesting that the successive waves of the pandemic may have had a devastating impact on joblessness, on poverty, even hunger. Joining me tonight to talk about the challenges before the economy and also did the government handle or mishandle the pandemic hit economy is Dr. Surjit Bhalla, Executive Director of the IMF and someone who's been a staunch defender of this government and its policies, joining me from Washington. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Bhalla, for joining me. Good morning to you. It's your morning where you are. It is evening where we are. Let me start by asking you that proposition, Dr. Bhalla, because all countries, as we know, face downturns in this time. The question is, how have they managed to recover from it, and have they done enough to cushion their population, whether it's the most vulnerable or even businesses? And it is here that India's track record has come into question, with many suggesting that compared to a number of other countries, we've done poorly. In fact, even Bangladesh has done better when it comes to its per capita income. Its per capita income has actually increased compared to India's.
Yeah, several ways I can answer that question. Thank you for having me. It's very interesting to say even Bangladesh. Right. Well, Bangladesh happens to be one of the fastest growing economies for the last decade. So therefore, that's not a surprise. Now let's look at the growth numbers that were out there.
Outstripping India, Bangladesh may be fastest growing, but outstripping India when it comes to per capita, isn't that?
Srinivasan, I won't be able to answer your very good questions if you keep interrupting me while I'm in the middle of an answer. So let's do it one by one. After I state my answers, you ask me the question, what about Bangladesh?
All right, okay. I just wanted to take you up on Bangladesh, but go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So let me first answer the questions on growth, and then we'll come to comparator countries like Bangladesh.
Okay.
So on growth, I just wanted to remind all of us that when the virus hit last year, the India's GDP growth rate was forecast to be something like minus 11%. And for the full fiscal year, and it's turned out to be minus 7.3%. So first, you get very different answers. You may get very different answers as the year progresses. Second, so in terms of performance, how India has performed vis-a-vis the virus relative to other countries, both in whether you look at OECD or whether you look at IMF, forecasts are that amongst the G20 countries, India will be the fastest growing economy this year as well as next year. Then we come to whatever other questions you may have.
Let me compare. All right. Okay. So let me first take you up on the fastest growing economy point, which is a point. It's a government talking point and a BJP talking point as well. We're fastest growing economy in the world. No, hold on.
That's. I'm here to answer your questions, not whether it is a government talking point or BJP talking point or Jain talking point.
Okay, I was only bringing it up. Fair enough.
Evidence.
I am on the evidence. I'm on the evidence. I was simply saying that this is something that we've heard before as well, and one response to that is that that's not really a fair comparison, because India is also coming off a much lower base, and that's why this fastest growing point, that when you actually look at countries like China, which actually had a positive growth last year, and that's why the rate of growth or the percentage of growth may not appear that high, but if you compare 2019 to fiscal 2021, you actually see China's growing at a faster rate than India.
Look, there are something close to 190 countries in the world for which we have GDP growth data. And you can pick, in terms of, I believe Guyana or something is growing at 20% a year. So you can choose whatever you want. You want to stick to the G20 countries, I'll stick to the G20 countries. And that's why I said for the whole year, you are giving from one base point to another base point. I'm talking for the calendar year 2021 and for the calendar year 2022. The forecasts of two leading agencies are that India's growth rate will be higher than that of China.
Okay. Now, let us move away from the growth rate statistics to actually look at what is happening on the ground, because regardless of whether we quibble over it was off a low or a higher base, the fact is that there are multiple reports which suggest that economic distress is fairly acute, and this is despite the government's claims to have rolled out a number of schemes, Atmanirbhar schemes, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. I won't sit and cite all of them because I'm sure you're familiar with them, but for instance, the Azim Premji University study, which you may have seen, which suggests that close to 23 crore more people may have fallen into poverty during the pandemic. Monthly earnings of workers have dropped. The poorest 20% households lost their entire incomes in April, May 2020, so on and so forth. Doesn't this suggest that somewhere we've been remiss, or essentially even failed in being able to protect the vulnerable from the shock of the pandemic and the lockdowns?
Okay. So now we'll look at the composition of the growth and how has it affected the poor and the vulnerable. There are several statistics available, and let me first address the unemployment statistic that we just mentioned, the Azim Premji study. To the best of my knowledge, that uses the CMIE data.
No, I didn't mention unemployment.
Yeah.
I just mentioned the figure about a large chunk of population falling below the poverty line, according to Azim Premji, 23 crores.
Let me just address both of them. I will address unemployment, and I will address the several people falling below a poverty line. So first on unemployment, the only data that we have, high frequency data, is the CMIE data. And as you know, perhaps even with you, 2-3 years ago, I commented on the CMI data, but let me just highlight the following, that in 2017-18, the CMI data had an unemployment rate of 5%, whereas the actual rate was 6.5%, according to the NSSO. Now in 2019, which is the last time we have both the CMI data as well as the NSSO data, the CMI data is 7.5%, 8% unemployment, and the actual, according to the NSSO, is 3.4%. The point of this being, and if you look at the unemployment data by states, let me finish.
But you're responding to a question. I didn't ask you about unemployment.
Listen,
I never brought it up.
Coming to that, everybody, Srinivasan Jain, everybody has their own way of thinking and answering. I go step by step rather than go to the particular. I will answer your question. If I do not answer your question, you then interrupt me. Okay. So now we come to the, in terms of what has happened to the bottom 20%, 40%, 50%.
Yes.
And what we have is that the Azim Premji study bases its results on what has happened to incomes on the basis of the CMIE data. So let's be clear. That's why you are in too much of a haste. The CMIE data is critical to the conclusions reached by you and by Azim Premji University.
Not a conclusion reached by me, by the way. I'm just citing the data.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to address. So when I answer the data, you say, listen, you're answering a different question. So the conclusion is that the CMI data shows a big fall in incomes. I do not know, quite honestly, how to assess that data because, or that information, because of the, in my view, the fact that this is a survey and we do not know about the reliability of the CMI survey for incomes. Now, one second.
So hold on. So is it your case? All right, now let me come in now, because otherwise... No, hold on. Dr. Bhalla, this is an interview. This is an interview. There has to be back and forth.
So now let's come to what has happened, what the government has done for the unemployed, for the welfare of the bottom 50%, etc. Narega expenditures are up 46%. 46% YOY. the fertilizer expenditures, which is for the farmers, for the poor, etc., they are fertilizer subsidies rather, are up 80%. Total expenditures for the bottom 40, 50, 60% are up 40% YOY.
Okay, hold on. Now, let me just jump in here. Let me, hold on. Just a second. Yes, there has been an increase in Narega outlay. Narega outlay, by the way, has been increasing, even prior to this, but Narega outlay has gone up and there's been a pandemic jump in the Narega outlay. But overall, the point many people are making is that when it comes to putting cash directly in the hands of the poor, the government has been extremely frugal. There have just been 2 instances where there have been direct cash transfers linked to the pandemic, which are schemes for widows, seniors and disabled, and also money that was transferred into the Jan Dhan account of women, right? This was anywhere an amount which came to between 300 rupees a month, right, to between 500 rupees a month. And this was just for 3 months. That's it. That's as far as it's concerned when it comes to providing some kind of monetary support. And many people, by the way, across the spectrum, across the political, ideological spectrum, from Abhijit Banerjee to even Uday Kotak, have said this is far too little and the government needs to be spending much more to put cash directly into the hands, especially of the vulnerable.
Okay. The PDS system, right,
yes,
which is where they're delivering food in kind,
yes,
and the food is available thanks to the storage
yes,
of food,
yes,
excess food, that is up. That's food. That's income. That is really the #1 nutrition or whatever food poverty alleviation, yes, which India has practiced for the last 70 years,
yes,
is giving food, and the food expenditures in the PDS have doubled.
Yes.
Double. So in other words, when you get, either you get cash transfers, and
yes,
I'll come to cash transfers in a minute,
sure,
or you get PDS food in kind. That has doubled. It's an increase of 104%. That is clearly a poverty alleviation exercise. Second, in terms of the cash transfers,
yes,
in 2011, the UPA, the issue came up about one nation, one card. And the NAC rejected that policy. And, think of where India would have been if we had one nation, one ration card. That means you are a migrant worker, no matter where you are, you're able to get the subsidy from the government.
No, hold on. I don't understand. You're saying
there are several states.
You're saying that because there's no one ration card. Wait. Let me understand. What does cash transfers? What does enhancing cash transfers have to do with one nation, one ration card? There's so many other ways of doing cash transfers, is there not?
Let me start from first principles. Poverty alleviation, as has been practiced in India, has always been in kind. Only recently, that is, since the Modi government came in, did we move to cash transfers. So therefore, I am looking at the fact that how much is the transfer total to the poor. The poor are not really concerned. Maybe scholars like you are concerned with how much of it is going through DBT and how much of it is not. We can address that. But as far as the poor are concerned,
yes,
their immediate need is for food. And the food transfers have doubled over the last...
Dr. Bhalla, hold on a second. Firstly, when you say that cash transfers have only started on the Modi government, I don't understand what you mean. I mean, people have been receiving cash in different forms, whether it's pensions or other benefits, for years. It may just be that the forms in which the money is transferred is different. But I'm talking about something else, Dr. Bhalla. When you go on saying that the poor largely need food, first of all, as you know from the PDS, what you largely get is wheat and rice, which doesn't make up the entire nutritional basket, right? And there's been enough research done to show that that doesn't meet the needs, especially when you have a pandemic-like shock. So we're talking about a very specific kind of situation where people are hurting and you require ways of boosting their income. And you don't need it just necessarily to fill their bellies, but also because you need to drive demand, right? Demand is suffering. Consumption, according to everybody, the RBI, everyone is down. And so that's where the problem lies.
Okay. Now, let me just answer that. Food expenditure,
yes,
according to the NSSO, the data that we use,
yes,
accounts for a total of 46% of total consumer expenditure.
Okay.
If you're getting, and a large element of food is cereals. If you're getting cereals
yes,
at 1 rupees or 2 rupees a kilo, which
yes,
is what you get from the PDS,
yes,
you're saving money that can otherwise go, that can then go for consumption elsewhere.
You don't have that money, Dr. Bhalla. Where is that, Dr. Bhalla? These people have lost livelihoods. They've taken salary cuts. They've had an income shock.
Srinivasan Jain, think about the following. Let us say we had all of the food was given in money kind. And I hope we come to a time where all transfers are in money and none are in kind.
Okay.
It's the overhang of the PDS system that means that we have to give money in kind.
Right.
So translate that money into how many rupees a month does a person get, and you will have.
Okay. So let me understand this, Dr. Bhalla. Yeah. Are you saying then that essentially, based on your understanding of these various reports that may have come out indicating distress and the fact that the government has actually done all this outreach, that there isn't acute economic distress in this country?
Okay. Now, the various reports that you were talking about, first of all, let's just be clear, is the CMI survey. Nothing more. You have not cited any other report. So please don't say various reports. All of them are linked to the CMI survey. That's number one. Number two is acute distress in the economy. Well, when an economy has a growth rate of -7%,
yes,
by definition, and which is one of the slowest growth rates
yes,
around the world, the pandemic here has resulted in acute distress for the people, especially for the bottom 50, 60, 70%.
Right.
Around the world, there isn't a place where this has not happened.
So but there are places which have done better than us, have they not?
Let me finish. Therefore, what everybody, including here at the IMF, etc., is saying, there has to be certain policies in place. The US put in certain policies in place in order to transfer the money. They don't have food stocks over here, so therefore they did cash transfers. And as I said, I hope we get to cash transfers in the next few years. However, there is a decline in growth rate and therefore distress in practically every country in the world. And therefore now we have to look at how does 2021 look like? How does 2022 look like?
Okay.
And
so let me understand this. I'm still not getting a clear answer from you. Have we as a government and a country done enough to address the distress or not? Because listening to you, you make it sound like we have, and there's really nothing more we can do.
So I don't know where you get the conclusion that there's nothing more to do. Therefore, the government should go to sleep. The government is not going to sleep. So what is the government trying to do in order to alleviate acute distress?
Yes.
I try to argue it through whatever numbers that we have, official numbers, whether it is on GDP growth, and GDP growth is consumption, is investment, and everything else. So therefore, according to that, that we are going back on track to be one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Now, please tell me which part of before you interrupt, tell me which question of yours I have not answered.
I'm just trying to say, in simple terms, what more do you think that the government should be doing or ought to be doing to try to alleviate distress? Because like I said, anyone watching you and listening to you would come away with the impression that we're doing just fine.
Listen, Srinivasan, I don't know, you think I am saying that we're doing just fine according to your definition of what fine is. I'm trying to answer a very straightforward question.
Yes.
And I saw your interview with Abhijit Banerjee.
Yes.
And he also said various things, and you were quiet. Very quiet. You did not interrupt him once. You allowed him to speak.
Come on, Dr. Bhalla, that doesn't behoove you now as an executive director of the IMF to start drawing comparisons of other interviews I've done. So let's not get into that.
Listen,
but we're very short on time. We're very short on time. Just tell me in brief. You're saying that the government has managed to transfer, if they've not done cash transfers, they've done a fair amount of food transfers in the form of free or subsidized food. That's gone up. But in addition to that,
fertilizer subsidies have gone up.
Fertilizer subsidies have gone up. Okay. In addition to that, in addition to that, is there anything else that you think the government ought to be doing to be putting money into people's hands, to be boosting demand, to be helping fight joblessness?
How do you think growth is coming back? You think the only way growth can come back is that when Srinivasan Jain says we should pump in more money, therefore that is the evidence that things are coming back. I think most people, including here at the institution where I am at, or OECD, or any professional institution you go to, they decide or they note some capsule types of information, which is GDP growth, which is consumption growth, which is investment growth.
Hold on, Dr. Bhalla. One simple function of how growth also comes back is just when you start to unlock. Yes? I mean, listen, growth was falling much before the pandemic, right? We've had falling growth for close to almost 11 quarters. Pandemic exacerbates and worsens India's growth crisis. When you start to unlock, inevitably, the chart will start to turn around, right? So some of it is just the natural sequence of those decisions.
Look, now I don't know how many you keep switching from one place to another. Now you're saying the growth had already started declining. You want me to address that? Or you
I'm
want
not
me
saying
to
that, Dr. Bhalla. Those are official statistics.
Sorry?
I said I'm not saying that. I'm not saying growth was declining pre-pandemic. That's not my view. Those are just official numbers. But anyway, I'm told we just have about a minute left. So, yes, go ahead, sir.
No, you keep interrupting me. Then you say you only got a minute left. What is the question you want me to answer?
Okay, my last question to you is, so you're saying that obviously enough is happening because growth is starting to pick up. So, is that it? Or is there anything more? Is there anything more you'd like to see the government do?
Yes. I don't know whether I didn't say enough is happening. I didn't say everything is fine. I'm saying that the forecast by official agencies around the world is that the recovery in India is well on its way, and that we will be the fastest growing G20 economy in 2021 and in 2022 and beyond. And you can, in terms of where we are 3-4 years down the line, there are various estimates. Where we are this year, there are estimates. So therefore, and what we know is that in 2020, that forecast was for minus 11% decline in GDP growth. And
you already,
reality
you
was
said
minus
that.
7.3.
Okay. All right, Dr. Bhalla, we'll have to leave it there. We could keep going, but we're completely out of time. Thank you very much indeed for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan Jain.